Believe it or not, once upon a time, Berkeley, California was known as the home of the free speech movement, where University of California students marched and advocated for free speech and academic freedom, and specifically, the right to advocate for whatever political cause you like. But you wouldn't think that if all you had was today's news, as somehow the home of free speech has mutated into its morgue. Where once a free speech sign was a beacon, it's now kindling. This is a photo from last weekend in Berkeley, the most mind-bending paradox I've encountered in some time. The burning of, and a middle finger to, a free speech sign as a political statement. Even Alanis Morissette couldn't write such irony. And this behavior is now a pattern. Last month we saw over $100,000 in property damage from violent rioters responding to Milo Yiannopoulos speaking on campus, with only one arrest made by a curiously indifferent police force. And this last weekend, violence again erupted at a March for Trump event in a Berkeley park, supporters of the president gathering to express that support, being met with our usual masked violent left-wing crowd, resulting in at least 10 arrests, with charges including battery and assault with a deadly weapon, those weapons including a dagger, metal pipes, baseball bats, 2x4s, and bricks. And like the Milo event, this one leaves us with a lot of questions. Specifically, who sucker punches a person in the throat? As one eyewitness asks, what's the distinction between Berkeley politics and a wrestling match?
You know, I'm like, is this a WWF 80s match with Hacksaw Jim Duggan, or is this a political rally?
He's actually got a point. Hacksaw Jim Duggan was seen putting up the best fight he could, but that long hair of his didn't serve him well. And what did we do to deserve the hero that rose to save the day? Based Stickman, the commie-smashing vigilante defender of freedom and justice. When I was a kid, Donatello was my favorite Ninja Turtle, but I'm an adult now, and this man is my new favorite hero with a stick. No question is more pressing to me, however, than a question many on scene asked, a question local reporters asked on their news broadcast. Why were police standing idly by, not intervening to mitigate the violence?
For the most part, officers kind of, kept back and kind of gave a hands-off approach. Juliet?
We've seen that stance before from officers. They also didn't move in during the violent Cal protests. So what are they saying about not moving in?
Yeah, they're not giving us an answer, but they're just kind of staying at the edge of the park. We're thinking maybe they're concerned about their own safety. Maybe they don't want to instigate or cause the crowd to even get even more violent. But for the most part, they're just kind of watching the fights happening. And so there are a lot of folks who are upset, pretty frustrated that they weren't moving in to try to break up the fight.
Based on the uniformity of Berkeley police action, or rather inaction, I think it's safe to assume it wasn't individual officer discretion or individual officer fear that motivated the passive approach. I think it's safe to assume there was a direct order to stand down. So let's operate under the assumption that there is such an order, which I can't conclusively demonstrate, but it's an assumption that seems consistent with the development of events. If there is such an order, who is it from? And why did they make it? Let's figure out who first. Many on social media and attending last weekend's event blame Berkeley's mayor, speculating that he issued such an order.
They've been ordered by the mayor to stand down. The city of Berkeley needs a class action lawsuit.
The mayor has denied making that order, however, saying this strategizing is under the authority of the police department. But he doesn't help his case by constantly making ill-advised tweets like hate speech is not welcome in Berkeley, and presumably, neither is the U.S. Constitution.
Isn't this America? I'm sorry, I thought this was America.
But if we look at the city's authority structure, it appears the mayor is telling the truth on who's doing the strategizing. He can't issue such an order, at least unilaterally, so he's not directly responsible, though as a city council member, he was directly responsible in appointing the individuals who are. In Berkeley, the mayor is the president of the city council. The current mayor has served on the council for 8 years previously, and the council has the authority to appoint the city manager, who has the administrative authority over all city departments and services, the police department included. According to the city's police regulations, the police chief directs the department under the administrative direction of the city manager. The regulatory language I've seen isn't clear enough to me to say with certainty which of these two would make the stand down call for police protest policy, but it is clear enough to say that's a decision that would exist somewhere between the two of them. And these are two new appointees. City Manager D. Williams-Ridley became the permanent city manager in March of 2016. And the interim police chief, Andy Greenwood, began serving after the resignation of the previous chief in September. City Manager Williams-Ridley personally appointed Greenwood as acting chief of police at that time. So we know this police policy of standing down while masked aggressors act violently upon lawful political demonstration is one made somewhere between the city manager and the chief of police, both of whom are new to their jobs. The second question is why? Why would they want this policy? The answer has actually been in development for several years. Berkeley's perspective on police best practices has been evolving since December 2014, when a sizable Black Lives Matter protest developed in Berkeley in response to the grand jury ruling in the Michael Brown case, bringing no charges against Officer Darren Wilson. During that demonstration, several businesses were vandalized and looted, and objects were thrown at officers, among other acts of violence. In response, police nearly depleted their supplies of tear gas and flashbangs to disperse the crowd. Police use of force was criticized as excessive, and a group of journalists and protesters filed suit against the city for damages related to alleged police brutality. In February of this year, that lawsuit was settled with the city, not fought and adjudicated in court, but settled willfully by the city, conceding to a $125,000 payout to 7 plaintiffs, as well as a series of policy changes, including reduced use of police force and no air monitoring of crowd movement during protest activity. Based on the city council's response to that incident, I am comfortable speculating that the council was far more on the side of Black Lives Matter and social justice activists than on the side of police in this instance, for a few reasons. First, the former police chief resigned abruptly and without a stated reason in September, suggesting a contentious relationship. Second, I think the council's partiality is evident in its choice of personnel to fill the vacancy. On the issue of race relations in Berkeley, City Manager D. Williams-Ridley said at the time of taking the job on an interim basis, "I think it's been difficult for our leadership, for employees and others, to have the conversation around race issues. We need to be speaking more from the heart, not the head. That's where people feel and receive trust and believe you're speaking authentically." You heard that right. More feels, less thinking. That is the philosophy the Berkeley City Council chose. That philosophy is echoed by the city manager's hand-picked interim police chief who says Black Lives Matter is great and gives a voice to marginalized people. This police chief recently stated in a memo to the city that the 2014 Black Lives Matter protests guided his hands-off approach to the Milo event, emphasizing a reactive as opposed to proactive method of managing the riot. In other words, demands from social justice activists directly shaped the police approach to managing what was an unmitigated display of violence and destruction in the name of social justice. And given the controversial, high-profile nature of this issue, it's hard to imagine this was not an issue of priority for the council in selecting city personnel. I don't want to put too much emphasis on isolated quotes, but I do think what we are observing in Berkeley is what happens when city government and police departments concede entirely to Black Lives Matter and social justice activists generally. When government decides its role is to play ideological favorites rather than protect the rights of everyone, regardless of political perspective, this is the outcome. There is no balance in this arrangement, no effort to ensure everyone has the right to demonstrate peacefully with use of police force only when necessary. And yes, I'd be just as uncomfortable if the city sided with the police 100% of the time without ever requesting review or accountability from them. Every ask I see in Berkeley is for a concession from the police department, but I don't see city government making similar asks for concession from radical, violent, left-wing activists. Balance and ideological neutrality. These are the things that keep the peace and ensure everyone's rights are protected. If I lived in Berkeley, I would ask serious questions of my city government, particularly why a specific political faction is granted nearly full authority for violent mob rule. And I'd ask it quickly too, because based on who's in power, I don't see this problem getting any better. Maybe we can airdrop Sheriff Clark in as a last-ditch effort for liberty and justice. Might be our only hope. Thanks as always for listening and for supporting this channel. Always appreciate that thoughtful discussion down below, and especially over on Twitter. That is at ML Christiansen. You're always welcome to come hang out and chat in my live streams. Those are linked down in the description. Looking forward to it. Okay, bye.